So George Carlin does this interesting bit about stuff. Well, he did this interesting bit. Obviously, he's not around anymore. Rest in peace, George. He does this thing about stuff and how, as Americans, we have so much stuff that we have to buy a big house to put all our stuff in, and then sometimes that's not even enough. We have to buy basically a house for our stuff. You know, we have to have storage and everything else, and it's kind of ridiculous. So one thing that I was thinking about last night while I was going through my email was stuff, and I'm on a newsletter listserv for this company called Tumbleweed. They make these small houses, micro houses, or they're almost like towable sheds. It's really strange, but they're like towable cabins and stuff like that. It's really cool stuff. And there's this whole movement for, like, you know, moving to a more self-sustaining, off the grid, small, eco-friendly house, and not having as much stuff. So I was reading through this article, and it basically was like, well, realize the pitfalls of that as well, and realize that when you declutter and you don't have access to all of these, appliances and the ability to store food so that you can buy in bulk, you're actually driving up the price of stuff. But at the same time, I'm thinking, God, you'd be so much healthier because you'd only be buying fresh fruit, fresh food that you'd be eating that day. Basically, you'd be, you wouldn't need to be, buying a bunch of shit you don't need. So I was reading through this article, and it mentioned a book. It was like tidying, the art of tidying your life, or something like that. I got to do some research on it, but it was talking about how there's this Japanese movement to declutter and just kind of like get rid of all of the excess stuff we don't need, because we're so gluttonous when it comes to that. We see something, we buy it, it sits around. I'm looking at my house, just sit there in the living room and kind of look around at all the stuff that I don't need that I have. And I guess part of being a kid is having what you want and feeling like you have, that you're provided for. And then as a parent, it's, what does my kid need? Not so much what does my kid want, and can I give my kid everything that my kid wants? Because if you give your kid everything they want, then it's ridiculous. They end up with a bunch of shit that they don't need. But as you get older and you think about yourself, you realize that it's kind of hypocritical sometimes. Like, I point the lens at my kids and think, God, you've got all this stuff that you don't use that just sits around, and we've invested in, like, how many hundreds of dollars in Pokemon cards and all kinds of crap like that. But then when I turn that lens on myself, I kind of justify it. I say, well, that's something that I need because of this, because of that, and I have so much clutter and so much stuff that I don't need, that I think it would be a really healthy exercise to start going through some of that stuff. And there are things that I justify by saying, well, I collect that, and books are one thing. I love books, absolutely love books, but I have so many books that I've got containers, Rubbermaid storage containers in the garage that are stacked on top of each other, that are, to the point of collapse, basically, of all these books. And the question is, am I ever even going to read them anymore? Understanding that books in and of themselves, the ones that I have, really aren't an investment. What can I kind of do to scale things down? So I've really been considering that. But in the scope of, being a grown-up, I think that it's important that we realize that it's kind of judgmental to think that our kids are cluttering when we are as bad, if not worse. So that's going to be kind of my mission as I continue through this year, to just kind of declutter. And I'm decluttering my wardrobe right now. I'm trying to get rid of stuff. I'm also trying to lose weight so that I can get rid of stuff. And, I really want to cut it back to a simple, minimal wardrobe, get rid of all these, like, extra t-shirts and stuff like that I have, and just get to the point where I have the necessities, because I, in the back of my mind, have this fantasy about just having one of those little tiny places and just having enough to get by, and not being as focused on my stuff as just living my life. And I think that that's one thing that we get caught up in, is we get caught up in stuff, and we don't get caught up in experiences and going out and doing cool things and meeting people and just living our lives. So that's another grown-up mission for this year.